Hi, it's Louise from Sincerely Louise, and in this video I've got some knitting tips for you. Project 1 was all about getting you knitting, but now you're on to Project 2, I've got a bit more technical information for you. The first thing you'll be making is a tension square, but before you do that you can check out these tips as they're going to help you along the way. The first one is about holding the yarn and needles, so if you're an English knitter you need to watch this. If you're a continental one, you can skip over this step. The second one is about row counting, which is really important for this project as you're going to be following a pattern and knitting lots of rows and you're going to need to count them. Welcome to Project 2 of First Time Knits. Your first task of this project is to make a tension square, but before you do that I've got some knitting tips to help you along the way. You'll also find these tips on page 36 of First Time Knits, so you can cross-reference this video to the book if you need to. My first tip is about knitting using the English method. If you're a continental knitter, you can skip this one. When knitting using the English method, you should hold the yarn and needles properly. This will regulate how loose or tight the yarn coming from the ball is and help with your tension, which I'll be talking about more in the next video. Once you've cast on your stitches, take the needle with those stitches on in your left hand as per usual. Then using the yarn coming from the ball, you need to wrap it around your hand. So start by wrapping it around your little finger. Then move it up over your fingers so it comes out between your index and middle, and then wrap it over your index finger. I'll show you one more time. Take the yarn coming from the ball and wrap it around your little finger. Then bring it up over your fingers so it comes out between your index and middle. Then loop it over your index finger so you're ready to start knitting with it. Then take your right needle and place it in your right hand as per usual. And then you're ready to start going. If there's a really big gap between your finger and the needle, you can always pull the yarn coming from the ball to make it slightly tighter, and that way it'll be easier to knit with. Then you can just start knitting as per usual, using the steps that you learned in Project 1. I didn't go over holding the yarn and needles like this in Project 1 because I believe it was more important to get you actually knitting and to show you how easy it is to do that knit stitch. Now that you've mastered that, by holding the yarn and needles in this way, it will help regulate how loosely or tightly you knit, and this will make your knitting more even. So if you noticed you had some wonky knitting with Project 1, this should help fix that. Once you've finished your row, you can try and keep the yarn running through your hands in the same position. But if you lose it, then you can just reposition it before you start knitting. So running it over your little finger, bringing it up so it comes out between your middle and index, and then over your index finger. So if you're knitting using the English method, I want you to hold your yarn and needles like this for all future projects. My next tip is about row counting, so this applies to English and continental knitters. I'd recommend buying a row counter, which is a little plastic thing that you can pop on the end of one of your needles. For each row you do, you move it so it keeps track of which number you're on. They come in different sizes, so make sure you get the right size for your needle, or you can buy a set of different sizes. Once you've cast on, take the empty needle and slide your row counter up to the end of it. Make sure it's set to 0, so if it has another number on it, just set it back to 0. If you haven't cast on yet, put the slip knot on the other needle. And then start casting on with the row counter on the right needle. So if you've cast on already, put the row counter on the right needle, and if you haven't cast on yet, make sure it's not on the needle with the slip knot, so once again the right needle. Cast on all the stitches you need for your project. Once you've finished casting on, or if you've cast on already, the empty needle needs to have that row counter on it. You don't have to have a physical row counter that goes on your needles. You can always use my tick off sheets instead, or you could download an app on your phone that does the same job. In my next video, I'll be using the row counter a bit more. So head over to the tension video for your first task of Project 2.